Measles cases surge 2,042,000%. This sounds terrible, doesn't 2,042%? That is a total, by the way, of 58 new cases. So when you hear that 2,000%, you're thinking, oh my gosh, this just spreading like wildfire. Well, it's up to 58 cases documented in Texas and New Mexico. The reports are that the cases are mostly in the unvaccinated. Now, notice they say mostly, or they say vaccination status unknown, which I mean, you're either vaccinated or not vaccinated, but they say vaccination status unknown, which means probably people not from this country coming in and they don't know whether or not they were vaccinated. And of course, the outlets just can't help themselves but to blame this all on Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Wall Street Journal came out with this saying, the Senate voted 52-48 last week to confirm Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as the nation's health secretary. In other news, 13 people in Texas were hospitalized for measles amid an outbreak of 48 cases, almost all in children whose vaccination status is negative or unknown. That was as of Friday morning. So again, the cases are now 58 cases, and the unknown means that these are undocumented or illegal or unauthorized people that are here. That is why that vaccination status is unknown. Goes on to say that, quote, due to the highly contagious nature of this disease, the Texas Health Department said additional cases are likely. The tragedy is that this doesn't have to keep happening. In 2000, measles was declared eliminated from the U.S., meaning 12 months with no continuous spread. Immunization has saved millions of lives around the world since the vaccine became available in 1963. The peril isn't small. About 1 in 5 unvaccinated people in the U.S. who get measles is hospitalized, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Nearly 1 to 3 of every 1,000 children who become infected with measles will die. Okay, that is, by the way, the same exact stat as the flu, like exactly the same stat as the flu. Goes on to say, yet for some people, the reality of measles feels like a sepia-toned history lesson where the anti-vax hooey featured on podcasts these days sounds current. RFK Jr., an environmental lawyer by trade, has long been part of the problem. And at his Senate confirmation hearings, he presented himself as just asking questions, man. That undersells his role in spreading doubt and confusion. Quote, 2 doses of MMR vaccine for measles, mumps, and rubella are 97% effective at preventing measles, the CDC says, but coverage is sliding. For the 2023-24 school year, the national estimate was 92.7% of kindergartners had 2 MMR doses, down from 95.2% in 2019 to 2020. An intervening shock was COVID-19, and there was bound to be consequences after health authorities burned their pandemic credibility. So at least the author from the Wall Street Journal acknowledges that, the fact that the COVID pandemic burned credibility, that people just don't really trust the health authorities anymore. But also what it did was it really helped people to question whether or not we should be getting certain, we just blindly believe what the doctors tell us. And we say, oh, okay, I need this, so I'll just go and get it. And no one really stopped to question anything. And since the COVID pandemic, people stop and say, wait a minute, why am I giving my 1-day-old infant a vaccine for a sexually transmitted disease? People are starting to say that doesn't make any sense, and I don't really know if I really want to do that. Now, when it comes to measles, though, practically everybody over the age of like 50 years old right now has had the measles. I mean, this was something that was just part of normal childhood life, was getting the measles, just like chickenpox. I mean, I had the chickenpox, I had the measles, I had the mumps, I had all of that as a kid. And most everybody I know did also. There's just a certain generation that didn't have any of those, and they're still young. We don't know what it's going to be like for them when they're older. I mean, what we do know when it comes to the chickenpox vaccine, for example, is that the UK doesn't even recommend it. I mean, they say, look, what we know now about this vaccine is that the shingles is worse for these people when they get older, and they're even getting shingles at younger ages. So they don't recommend the chickenpox vaccine, but I don't know the last time I saw a kid here in the United States with chickenpox. I mean, I guess they're all just going to be sitting ducks for terrible shingles. But the measles is something that they started the vaccination in 1963, but most of the people didn't get it in 1963. Really, the measles vaccine didn't start picking up until the 70s, but even then, a lot of kids didn't get it. A lot of kids just had the measles. In fact, here's Robert F. Kennedy Jr. sitting down with John Stossel saying that exact thing. Like, hey, I mean, I had the
All
measles.
right, I would love to talk about that more, but we're low on time and I want to get to vaccines. If your kids were young now, would you give them the measles, the mumps vaccine?
No. I got measles, mumps when I was a kid. It was
Lots of people used to die from those diseases.
well, you know what? They died in the 1900s or early 1900s. There were about 10,000 Americans a year died. In 1964, there was about 300 or 400 who died, and they were almost all severely malnourished kids, mainly from the Mississippi Delta. This was before the poverty program, so there was a lot of starving children in our country. It's very, very hard to kill a healthy child with any infectious disease, but particularly with measles. And the World Health Organization now says vitamin A is an absolute cure for measles, which we didn't know about back then. Back then, we were treated with chicken soup, and it was, a week at home watching Leave It to Beaver, and every kid caught it. Every single kid got it. And I had 11 brothers and sisters, and we all got it, and we were all fine. And there are lots and lots of studies out there now that show that kids who get measles as a child are much healthier when they grow up, that they're much more resistant to cancers, to atopic diseases, to allergies, and to heart disease.
Yeah. In fact, the Mayo Clinic has come out saying that, believe it or not, measles virus can potentially kill cancer. And people who have immunity to the measles virus in their bloodstream might have some protection against cancer. In fact, the Mayo Clinic did something really radical. They decided to inject measles not the vaccine, the measles virus into cancer patients. And they found that it caused the cells to join together and explode. But not only that, the lasting immunity to the measles seemed to have a similar effect where it would mop up the cancer cells. So, when and people that there's other studies saying that people who've had the measles have fewer allergies, have fewer illnesses. The cancer thing is a big thing, have fewer cases of cancer. So that's kind of a big deal. And it just kind of goes to show that we don't really know what we're doing. That's what science is, and that's okay. That's what it's supposed to be. We don't really know what we're doing, and we should recognize that and just kind of roll with it. But instead, we don't know what the long-term effects are of vaccinating an entire population with measles and eradicating measles. We just don't know yet, because the people who've never had the measles, they're right now in their 30s. I mean, the only generation who never really got the measles right now are in their 30s. Everybody else, there was quite a few kids that got the measles, and at certain generations, everybody got the measles. It was just completely normal. Same thing with chickenpox. We don't know the long-term effects. I mean, the UK, like I said, has some idea of the long-term effects of getting the chickenpox vaccine and not getting chickenpox, the shingles issue. But we don't really know what the long-term effects are, and how maybe those viruses that are natural, what they did for us. Like, what were they doing for us that we didn't know about, that we're now losing out on, that the generation below me really is losing out on, because they're not going to have measles or chickenpox at all. We just don't know. We're just kind of playing around as we go. And I think that, as we get this more research coming out, with Mayo Clinic coming out and saying, hey, measles actually might kill cancer, and there might be, they've got to start looking into that. Is the measles somehow, if you have immunity, lifelong immunity to it, is it somehow protective against certain cancers? And if so, then you would take that risk. I think as a parent or as a person, you would take the risk and say, I would rather get the measles that has the same exact chance of me dying as the flu. It's exactly the same chance of death as the flu, except there's a big difference. Once you get the measles, you're done with it. You're never going to get it again. I got it once and that was it. 3 years old, had measles. The flu, you get all the time. So that risk is there year after year after year. If you get the flu every 3 years or so, that risk is there over and over again. So what are the protective benefits? What are we not knowing? And then we don't know, they still haven't studied accurately the long-term side effects of any of these vaccines. They don't know where certain neurological disorders come from. They just say, well, it's not from these vaccines, but they don't know where they come from. So how can they confidently say that? How do you know where anything comes from if you don't know where it comes from? How can you say, well, it wasn't this, it's not that? You don't know. You have absolutely no idea. And that's the point of science. We should be questioning all of it. And we should also be looking and saying, oh, maybe some of these things that we think are ugly, like chickenpox and measles, and they're frightening and ugly, maybe these things have some sort of long-term protective benefit that we're not aware of. We're not smart enough to figure out yet, but Mother Nature had it all figured out. And maybe we should just leave well enough alone. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is right. I mean, the protective thing is health and clean water, clean sanitation, and proper nutrition. The kids that die from things like the flu and things like measles, they either had already very immunocompromised systems. Maybe they already were suffering from some disease, or they were already frail and not going to make it. And then this was the thing that took them out. I mean, we see that with the flu all the time with young and the old. But proper nutrition, proper water, proper sanitation, vitamin A, we're finding out that sunlight, vitamin D, vitamin A, all of these vitamins are so protective and healthy for us. And that is enough for the average person to just get over these natural viruses that are out there. And again, that we don't know really the protective benefits of. But I want to play this clip because this just kind of shows that, the measles was completely and utterly normal. So normal, the Brady Bunch did an entire episode on it.
Peter, what are you doing home from school?
They sent me home. Measles.
That's either measles or a strange case of red freckles.
You have got a temperature.
They told me 101.1. What's the record?
Never mind.
Oh, are you sure it's the measles?
Well, he certainly got all the symptoms. A slight temperature, a lot of dots, and a great big smile.
A great big smile.
No school for a few days.
Say hello to my dotted son for me. Tell him I'll bring him some comic books and I'll see you later, dear.
Okay, honey, bye.
Boy, this is the life, isn't it? Yeah. If you have to get sick, you sure can't beat the measles. That's right. No medicine.
Inside or out? Like shots, I mean.
Don't even mention shots. Yuck.
Measles, measles, measles. Well, all the kids have now had the measles.
So have I.
Well, I had them years ago. Looks like the Bradys are finished with the measles.
Hold it. You're not through yet.
Alice, don't tell me you're coming down with the measles.
Oh, I hope so. I'd hate to think I was just learning how to blush at my age.
It was normal. Everybody got the measles back then. And now people are just absolutely freaking out like, oh my gosh, this deadly disease is back. They're treating it like it's the smallpox. But again, it is, they're just the fear mongering. My biggest problem with this is just the big fear mongering around this, with the titles of 2000% increase in the measles. Oh my gosh, making that sound like everybody's getting it when it's a couple of dozen cases. And then pointing the finger at RFK Jr. And the thing that really worries me about this is that this is going to be the trend for the next 4 years. I mean, here RFK Jr. is the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and you just know that they're going to have these outbreaks and they're going to purposefully fearmonger the same way they did COVID. They're going to purposefully fearmonger to get people to freak out and say, oh, this is all Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s fault. This is all his fault. And, try to get people to turn away from what he's saying, turn away from the truth that he's sharing about the science, what we know, what we don't know. So I am going to expect that over the next 4 years, we're going to see a lot more of this, unfortunately. Well, speaking of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., thanks to him, Americans are becoming more aware of the chemicals, preservatives, and who knows what else that is thrown into our food supply. Even fresh produce isn't what it used to be. GMO this, pesticide that. That is why I love Field of Greens. With Field of Greens, I can trust what I'm putting into my body. Field of Greens is made with 100% real whole fruits and vegetables, nothing artificial, no synthetic junk. Just one scoop gives me a head start on my daily nutrition, and I do this every morning before my morning cup of coffee. And here's the best part. Every ingredient is doctor selected for specific health benefits like heart, health, metabolism, immunity, digestion, and more. Field of Greens even guarantees that at your next checkup, your doctor will notice the difference or your money back. And I've got 20% off for you. Just go to fieldofgreens.com, use code Kim. That's fieldofgreens.com, code Kim. Highly recommend that you get the lemon lime or the strawberry lemonade. Those are my favorite flavors, but I will say that the original flavor does taste good. If you're the type that drinks like a chocolate protein shake in the morning, it tastes really good actually in chocolate protein shake. It kind of gives it a berry flavor. So I definitely recommend this. This is part of my morning routine, and I think you should definitely make it part of yours.